ওই অভিশ্রী ক
না এখানে ঠিক আছে।
মই আকৌ শুনা নাপালো একো। Can you send me the link back again, like chat box বা WhatsApp, whatever is convenient?
Agniv, you've logged in through the BMC account, right?
I don't think I have.
Agniv, you've logged in through
Dude,
the
what is
BMC
happening,
account,
man?
right?
Inception.
Okay, who's logged in through the BMC account then? Okay. Can you give me host controls and accept everyone who's entering?
Just wait a minute, okay? Uh, who made this link though?
I did.
Like from the BAMC account, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Deepika, if you get host controls, can you remove people from the meeting?
I'll try one. Yeah, I can.
Okay, okay.
Let's start then. Or should we wait for like 2 more minutes?
How many volunteers do we have?
Dude, we have about 40 and half of them haven't joined, I guess. Okay, Screwed, we're gonna start. So here's the thing, like a few important instructions. So we're gonna have the webinar tomorrow at 4, right? So all the volunteers, it's mandatory for every volunteer of the BMC to join the meeting by 3:40. So again, like plan everything accordingly. If you know you have a class at like which will probably end around 3:45 or something, make sure that you join in for that class through your cell phone or something, and join the BAMC meeting through your laptop. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that you have to look presentable, because there is a chance that they will probably ask us to switch on our cameras, okay? So in those instances, we'll need the volunteers to switch on the cameras. And for that, you have to look presentable and like try to like try to join in when you have a blank background behind you. And okay, and this is really important for the first years. So the first years, you guys have a class. You were supposed to have a class from 4 to 5 with a Prajata ma'am. Uh, you were supposed to have one with Aprajita ma'am, but now that class is cancelled. And instead of that, Aprajita ma'am is going to take your attendance through this webinar's Google Meet. So you're going to get attendance for your legal English class only provided if you join tomorrow's webinar at during that time. All right. Okay, and the third thing is regarding the new volunteers again. You guys, as you know, you have been provisionally accepted. So again, it's contingent on whether you work, and like all the team volunteers, they have been giving me updates about whether you've been working or not. So where you're likely to get your final acceptance or rejection into the committee like by the first week of October, if I'm not wrong. So again, if you haven't really been working or responding, now is the time to redeem yourselves, because we have been observing that a lot of you haven't bothered to even show up for any meeting, or like and some of you are planning to not even show up for the webinar. So please note that we will be keeping all these things in mind when we're going to evaluate you guys. So that's about it. And now I'll hand it over to the team coordinators to tell all of you about your specific roles during the webinar. So the main pointers is that you have to attend, be on time, be at 3:40, look presentable. So over to I guess we can start with Abhishri.
Most of our work is done. Just show up on time on the day of the event, that is tomorrow. And if any other team they need any people, I think our volunteers and me will be more than happy to help, since our work is mostly pre-conference. So
Okay, great. And also, like on this note, Kajal, you could probably even take volunteers from the design team or the logistics team, since you're short on rapporteurs for the actual event. So you could probably discuss that right now.
No, I think I have enough volunteers. I was just informing you about Manin. He can't make it tomorrow, so
Okay, fine. Again, like if people who won't be showing up tomorrow, that'll also reflect really badly. So like we're gonna take note of that. So again, like you guys, please cooperate. Like showing up for events is like the least we can expect from members. So just keep that in mind. I guess that we can now go on to Agnev.
Yeah, but like I really don't need everyone on the call at this point. And the only other thing that I would like to tell everyone is that like if anyone will not be able to join tomorrow at 4 p.m., then please just mention right now. It does not need to be like a secret or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
see,
is
like
there
Me, I
comment
won't be able to attend tomorrow.
or just do one thing?
Personal reasons.
Send whoever will not be able to join the meeting tomorrow. Send a message on the group ASAP, like right now if possible, because we need to know how many people are going to join and how many aren't. So like no point saying it later.
Okay.
Say it like send a message right now. Okay. And if there's anything else that like anyone has to say to all of the volunteers, Otherwise, I just want the logistics volunteers to stay back.
See again, like we're really accommodative. Like if you have a genuine reason, you can like choose to be absent. But then again, if you're like just if you're just gonna like not show up for anything and not do any of the work, there's no point having any of you guys in the team, right? So just ensure that you give us. I mean, if you really have some genuine work, then only you can not show up for the meeting. And again, like all the first years, if you're not going to show up for the meeting, you won't even be getting attendance for your English class tomorrow. So just keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, and one last thing, I think the registration form is still active, right?
Yeah, it's going to be active till tomorrow afternoon. We're going to close it around 12 or something.
Yeah, so the last thing that I'd like to tell all the volunteers is that like this is the last time to do it. So like if you have any groups or something where you guys talk about law or whatever, I don't know what kind of groups you're on, but like if you have any groups of study groups or whatever, please send the link and like try to make the registration number like increase because I think what's the digit now on the registration?
Vishwa, give us an update on the promotions. Okay, great.
Yeah, so last time it was a lot more than this, right? So it's actually a little disappointing that it's only 430. Last time it was like over 1000. So anyway, I can't control that. But like the only thing that you guys can do is if you have not sent it to any of your friends or any groups, please send it tonight because the webinar is tomorrow. So that's all.
Cool. Any other doubts? Any other clarifications? Just ask us now.
Or the logistics people stay back, the rest can leave if you don't have anything to ask. Where is Aruna? Is he there? Eh, dude, you have to be ready tomorrow. Did you get your suit?
And call Nandani ma'am at 9 a.m. Aruna.
Okay.
Why?
She asked me to tell him something, I don't know, something important regarding that hosting thing.
Wow.
I hope I get up on time.
Aruna,
Oi,
also one thing,
okay.
if you change anything to this page and like the order or anything, just let me know because I'll have to change the PPT slides accordingly, right? So
Okay.
Oh yeah, we have a
inform
change
me.
regarding the PPT thing, na, Deepika?
Kyol.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Everyone except for the logistics members can leave. That's about it, right, Agni? These are the people in your team.
Yeah, I think so. Um, yeah, yeah. There are a few people missing, but yeah, this is basically it.
Just keep note of that as well.
We'll get the attendance sheet, right, of the meeting, or do we need to record for that?
It's fine, dude. Like, I think we will get an attendance sheet after. Yeah, we always do.
Yeah. So, so yeah, should I start?
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Like,
Yeah,
no need for waiting, right? Or will you
waiting. What waiting?
for like the entire team to join?
No, no, no. Do you think these people like joining these meetings? It's 13 minutes past the time. Nobody's going to join. Anyway, so the first thing is that Snigdha and Mahi are here, right? So the first thing that I want you guys to do is actually make the link right now. The like schedule the meeting for tomorrow right now. So please, one by one, don't do it together. One of you screen share your screen and go to YouTube Studio. And Abhishri, do you have the what do you call it? That small thumbnail. Did you send me on WhatsApp or where did you send me?
WhatsApp.
Very
as
good.
a document. I'll forward it.
Can you
Can you
email
all
it to
see
me
my
or
screen?
something?
Can you all see
Who's
my screen?
presenting? Yeah, 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 yeah. I can. So go to YouTube Studio. Go to where was it? Yeah, stream. Yeah. Okay, go to the schedule stream. That is the third icon on the left. On the left.
Yeah,
On
I
like
can't
more
see
left.
it.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
one?
The third one. Yes. Okay, Deepika, what do we need to give the title of this? What was the title of the original one? We have to have all of them the same, right?
Yeah, I'll just check it out and tell you.
Mm, are you checking or should I?
I'm checking.
Okay.
Mahi, can you check the logistics too?
Yeah, sure.
Mm.
So that's the thumbnail, okay? Whatever I have shared. Oh wait, the quality is bad. I'm sending it again. Yeah, don't download that. I'm sending it again. Or should I email it to you?
You can email it to me.
Okay. Can you send your email in the chat box?
Yeah, sure.
And I think who else is there? Snigdha, no? You also give me your email.
Like my normal email or the college one.
Wherever like you'll get
Whatever
it.
you're comfortable with.
Yeah, convenient.
Yeah.
Okay, so Deepika, by the way, we have like 457 registrations right now. So that's like 47 more than the already sorted ones. So I'll just sort these myself only. If it goes up also by tonight, I'll do it myself.
Yeah, yeah. And also the title should be webinar and then that a colon, sorry, semicolon, and then
We can't hear
you.
you, Deepika.
Copy paste it, no?
Yeah, yeah, I'll just type it out.
What's the title?
Yeah, I think Deepika is sending it.
Okay.
Snigdha, like, are you following her? You can do it.
Yeah, I'm following her.
All the information is provided only. I don't think there's a scope for mistake anyway. Just follow what Mahi is doing. Like, she has not done anything yet, so follow from now.
That's the title. Just copy paste it.
No, don't add the BAMC towards the end.
Okay.
The main link has BMC. Should we remove it?
Yeah, yeah. Because it's conducted by like a lot of other people, right?
Agnev, Hussaini Bey.
Kiki.
मेन जो उनके लाइव स्ट्रीम लिंक तो आता है BMC लिखा है
Oh,
Yeah, like
nalage
they
niki.
have the IQAC cell in Delhi, DU and all, right? So let's just like remove BAMC.
It's sad, man. We do
Yeah,
all the work and they take the credit.
even vote of thanks is given by the DU guy, even though DU had like no sort of involvement in this.
What about their students?
Yeah, they could have honestly had like a student coordinator even from DU, right? It's mainly because the VC and those two speakers, like
Uh,
it was so weird because we I don't remember seeing any person from that Delhi School of Public Policy also signing up for this.
Oh yeah, man. Oh wait, I think I just sorted it out and I. Oh yeah, yeah. It's not. Let me do a Google's like what do you call it? Google. I'll do a search. Control F.
I have emailed
Five
you the
people from
thumbnail.
Delhi.
Refresh.
Also, Agni, you knew like a lot, Varsha, the new tasks.
Varsha. What task was it? Oh yeah. Okay, okay. Varsha is here, right? Varsha, are you here? Okay, okay. So the thing is that I'm going to give you a draft and I'm going to give you something called webinar etiquettes. So like we're going to
Mm.
send out the invitations tomorrow, and for us to send the invitation tomorrow, we'll need to draft this entire like invitation thing. So we need to incorporate a few things. I'll just I'll just send you a few things. So like, can you use Google Document and everything, Varsha?
Wait, Agni.
Oh.
Do you remember you compressed the size of the file to
Yeah, I do
MB?
remember.
You have it.
Wait. I'm searching. Just a minute. You said you were tired of compressing, right?
Wait. I only have it. Giving.
So you were not tired of compressing.
What's the point?
Absolutely nothing. That's why it's silly. Yeah, Varsha, I did not get a reply from you. Can you use Google document and everything? I have to share something with you. So yeah. So I'll just share it with you, the draft thing, and I'll tell you where to make the changes. So you just incorporate those. Dude, we'll need to do it by tomorrow, right? Deepika, like send the invitations.
Yeah, but I need it in the evening because obviously I'll
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
review and edit.
of course. Of course. I'll send it to you by tonight.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
Abhishri tell me to do something? Oh no, no.
I've emailed you the revised version. Just check it out and upload that.
Yeah. What?
Abhishi, also for some reason the thumbnail gets cut. Is it just like
Really?
my laptop or something?
Wait.
Is it? Let me check.
It might be your laptop, dude, because like remember this poster was getting cut when you were presenting also.
Um, I haven't received the mail yet. Oh, I have.
Snigdha, are you doing it
Yes.
right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Agnes, you can like instruct those other people, right, who are on the call? Shivang, Udayan, Das.
Udayan, was he in my team? I don't even remember.
I don't remember. Uh, yeah, you can instruct Shivang sir. Even he can leave, I guess.
Shivang, like you'll be there on the meeting tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir. I'll be there. I'll be there.
So I'm just gonna make you meeting host for tomorrow. Like I think there's gonna be a few other people, but still we can't rely on like one person to do it. So like we'll need a few people to do it. So that's the thing. You,
Okay, sir.
me, and one other person will be the meeting hosts. And who is the other person on the call? Is Saranga there? No, he's not there.
ওই লাইভ চ্যাটটা কথাখিনি ঠিক করে দেচোন অগ্নিৰ
Oh yeah. Live chat, keep it off, okay? And Shivang, yeah, that's about it for you, dude. Like, just join and you'll be made the meeting host for tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
sir. Okay.
Shivang,
You
like,
you you'll be the other host, right?
people create news.
Yes, I
Keep
will.
them up.
Okay.
Mahi, like, set the schedule 1600 hours. Shivang, you can leave.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Agreed, sir.
Huh.
Sir, the option like if it's made for kids or no, it's not made for kids. What should
No,
I put?
no, it's not
Uh,
made for kids.
it's not made for kids. No kid
Should I
will
confirm
understand
it
what
now?
will happen. Yeah, yeah, confirm. How-
And the restriction of the age?
Yeah, I don't think you needed to go to advanced settings or something like that. I think you went there, but like,
No,
just
no,
give
it's
it
Just
okay.
normal
screen
It's okay.
share
default.
next. Screen share next, and then you
Yeah,
can sort
I
it out.
think Mahi, all you need to do right now is like, let me just explain it to you once, like just to refresh your memory. Tomorrow at 3:40 p.m. When you join the meeting, you need to copy the stream key, paste it in the OBS thing, and then you need to start streaming. When you press start streaming there, here the go live option will become blue, so you can go live at that point of time. But for now, all you need to do is share the link of the live stream, like just beside the go live thing, just beside the go live thing, that small share icon. Yeah, copy it and paste it on our group, but please mention that link to, just write link to. Yeah. Snigdha, like, if you're, are you facing any problem?
I'll screenshot. Anytime.
Mahi, I think the screen, yeah, I think this is done.
Okay.
Let me
Also,
just check once. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, कल जब हम लोग start करेंगे 3:40 पे, so where can I find this whole thing?
You'll find it on your Google. Do one thing, click on YouTube Studio, that icon.
Okay.
So you recognize this screen, right? So
Yeah.
now you need to go to the stream option again, like the live stream thing on the right.
Where?
Yeah. Go to manage, the third icon. Yeah, see, it's there. You just need to tap on that.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Deepika, I think like tomorrow, what we can do is we'll just have another small link, okay, for the logistics member, so that they can join that link also, so that I can show these basic stuff if something, because we can't do all this before the meeting starts, right? We can't do the logistical work on the main link. So we'll just create another link for logistics tomorrow. And Snigdha,
Yeah,
you
so
can present
but
your screen now.
But one doubt, like if this scheduling
Yeah.
the meet for like 4 p.m., right? But people can still like join before that.
Like we are providing them with the link, right? So I think I can join right now, and I think I already did join that day, like when we were checking if anybody can enter the link. I think we did, right?
Yeah, we can do it
We
on
can.
like before time, especially with our NLU Assam IDs.
Yeah, with the NLU Assam ID, anyone can enter. In fact, I'm going
Mm.
to enter right now.
No,
Why?
I meant like the YouTube link.
Whoa, whoa. What?
Yeah, YouTube link
Remember?
also you can.
Okay.
So the YouTube link, the only thing with the YouTube link is that it's going to start at 4. Before
It'll
that, it's just going
say
to show that,
live in this.
yeah, live in 5 minutes, live in 2 minutes. But I'm gonna start live streaming 5 minutes prior to the beginning. So like it's gonna go live from 3:55 or something. Yeah, Snigdha, what's your problem here?
can you check the
Not
meeting?
made
Okay,
for
but
kids is done.
should you ask these people also to like start to put it as 3:55 or something? Because in that 3:55 we're gonna show them the webinar it is, right?
Oh yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we actually can do that. So when you send out
Because
the
last
invites
time, huh?
tomorrow, make it 3:55. We don't need to change anything else. You just need to change the mention out there. Turn this off, live chat, Snigdha. Yeah, public. Make it, change the time, the date and the time. 4. p.m.
Wait, my mouse is not working. Wait, I'm calling my brother to help me.
Why do you need your brother?
My mouse is not working. That's it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Mahi, if you're like the I think the meeting link is done. So like you can leave. Your work is over for today.
Okay, thank you.
And Varsha also, I think I allotted you your work, right? I'll send it to you like by tonight. Like after the meeting, I'll send the document to you. Can you share your email ID on the WhatsApp group, the logistics group? So I'll send it. I'll share it with you.
September 25.
Yeah, you can leave,
Hey, Basha,
Varsha.
you'll be this by 10:30, okay? Not later than that.
Snigdha
Yeah.
changed
Okay.
the date first.
Yeah. So Udayan Das is from promotions. So like, is he there or has he just joined and left?
I think he joined and left. It's fine. Leave it.
Dude, we've become like a class, man. People are joining and leaving.
No, it's okay now. The date and time is okay.
Do one thing. I actually missed to check your customization and all that. Can you click on those again if possible?
Yeah,
Yeah. Live chat is off, right?
yeah.
And go to the details once again. Okay. Okay. Oh, Mahi, is she there or has she left? I think one of her accounts is logged in, but I don't know. Okay, click next. Snigdha, you're yeah, this is okay, I think. Next. Yeah, so I think I'll have to tell this to Mahi later on, but I'll just tell Snigdha. So tomorrow, what will happen is once the live stream is active, we might have to change our descriptions, right,
Yeah,
Deepika?
yeah. Yeah.
So what are we giving in our description?
See, description in the beginning of the event, we're gonna give them the etiquettes. Towards the end, we have to modify to the feedback form link.
No, no. Are we giving the etiquettes on the description? I was thinking of giving the links.
Yeah, etiquettes with the links, right? I mean, by etiquettes, I meant like telling them about the feedback form and certificate scene.
Yeah, I thought we are doing that with that reminder email, Deepika.
We can't even
The
like write
etiquettes thing.
two sentences. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, we can mention that.
yeah. Like obviously, we put the alternative links before, and then after that, we could
Yeah,
write
yeah.
the certificate scene.
So we'll just write that like for the certificate, you need to wait till the end of the meeting or something like that. And then like we will provide you with a form to fill up. We'll just
Yeah,
write that on the description.
yeah.
If you can't see it, refresh your thing
Okay,
through.
so these are some of the things which I should have already done. But I'll do it today because Snigdha and Mahi both have to change this like tomorrow
We can
before the
draft the
event.
text today only and send it in the group, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
can
I'll
update it
draft it, but
accordingly.
I'll tell them to copy paste it. Yeah.
And
So,
say that
हाँ,
QR code आता हुआ है. If they can't access the link, they can scan the code.
we're so fancy, right?
Yeah, we are using
Just
QR
reminding
codes.
QR codes. Next time we'll just have a virtual meeting with nothing. Okay, I don't know what I'm saying, man. So Snigdha, yeah. So the thing is that tomorrow you might have to change the what do you call it, the description. So I'll just send you what to write, and I guess for you also, like we're done. I don't think I have anything more to add. And is Mahi in the call? Like she's here, but I don't know if this profile of her works. I don't think
No,
she
she left.
is.
I think she left that time only when you asked
Yeah,
her.
Is
but like
Mahi and Mahi with two A's in the same person?
yeah, it's the same person.
Okay.
But like she has two profiles for some reason. Anyway, Snigdha, so yeah, that's about it. And like okay, wait. What the hell, man? This guy. Okay, I'll tell you later. Snigdha, yeah, you can leave.
Yeah, why
Thanks,
are we
by the way.
asking us to allow him now?
Yeah, that was why I was laughing. You
Wait,
you you denied it, right?
yeah, yeah. Snigdha, she still wants to, like, she's still here or what? Or she left?
Snigdha also has two profiles. Yeah. So wait, I'll just remove Mahi also from this. Yeah, so now it's only our people.
Hmm.
Okay,
Arnav.
PPT same to
And
you.
by the way, listen, people. This is being live streamed,
Okay.
so please chill.
What's the scene? What's
When
the
will you stop the live stream?
I actually didn't want to stop the live stream. Okay, wait. I can stop it. Wait, I'll do it. Give me a minute.
Also, Aruna, like we confirmed with Saib sir in the previous meeting. Did you switch the thing? Like right before vote of thanks, tell them about the certificate scene, okay?
okay, okay.
If you have a little bit of anxiety around the idea of taking calculus, I would encourage you to give it a chance.
Hello, students. In furtherance to the lecture that we had previously on water-related laws and policies that we have in our country. Hi there, Hello, students. In furtherance to the lecture that we had previously on water-related laws and policies that we have in our country, I wish to discuss about this National Water Policy of 2002. Now, this water because this particular water policy was in furtherance to the previous policy, which came in the year 1987, which I believe I have mentioned and discussed. Now, the thing is that this water policy, the prime objective behind this water policy was to touch upon several aspects of water related challenges and facets that we have. And when we talk about water related aspects, that I what I mean from that is not just the drinking water that we usually talk about, but at the same point of time, groundwater management is something which the General Water Act doesn't talk about, but it basically talks about the planning and management and development of these water resources, be it groundwater, be it surface water, all those other sources of water, to be very specific. Now, this water policy clearly highlights that it's a natural resource, and it is required for not just human beings, but it is also a precious national asset. So, for the same, when you look at from a national assets angle, then there are several aspects of governance which is required. So, planning, development, and management of these resources are required to be governed by the national perspectives. So, it was way back when in 2002 this water policy was adopted. They refer to some pre-existing facts and figures, in which you will also find they have referred to the precipitation and its confinement to particular areas. On one side we have the Rajasthan, which is quite struggling when it comes to water-related resources. And on the other side, we have Meghalaya, where we used to see highest rainfall. Now, in a way, the water is, of course, a part of a bigger ecological system, and we do realize its importance and its scarcity at the same point of time, which is basically attached to fresh water. Despite the fact, the substantial portion of this planet is covered with water, but when it comes to fresh water, when it comes to drinking water, we are pretty much lagging behind. So it needs to be treated in a very sustainable way, because we have to think about the wholesomeness of water, and we can only sustain, and all the other life forms can only sustain in this natural resource that we have. So in addition to that, this water policy of 2002 clearly identifies that the country has entered this 21st century, and there is a requirement to develop, conserve, utilize, and manage this important resource. So, and of course, in a sustainable manner that is to be guided by the national perspective. Now, when you say something like that, it kindly highlights the crucial element of development, and you cannot discard the socio-economic aspects and the needs of the states at the same point of time. So the proper planning, development, conservation, and management is required, because water is scarce. And at the same point of time, it's a very precious national resource. So at the same point of time, this policy also highlights the challenges that we've been facing for quite a long time: floods and droughts, for example, which affects the vast areas of this country. And 1/6 area of this country is drought prone, which is a very scintillating figure. So there is a dire requirement for management of droughts and floods, and that has to be coordinated and guided at the very national level. So that is the emphasis that they have given, since it's a national asset, it's a national resource. So a national perspective and proper coordination and guidance at the national level is required. So planning and implementation of this water resources projects, which usually involve numbers of socioeconomic and other issues relating to environmental sustainability, and also appropriate R&R, so-called resettlement and rehabilitation of those people who usually get affected. Their livestock gets affected, public health gets affected. There are so many factors which you have to take into consideration when you deal with water. And let's not forget other problems in addition to displacement of floods and droughts. We have the issues relating to waterlogging. We have issues relating to soil salination, and let's also not forget the issue of desertification. So it's a very complex factor that we have to keep in mind when we deal with water. And these complex issues of social justice and equity is also there, which in fact is quite related to water distribution of agricultural land, for agricultural land. So the development, overexploitation of groundwater resources in certain parts of the country have also raised several concerns, because of which the government decided back then that the previous policy was not sufficient enough, so they have to think forward. And this is not that this policy is the final policy. Even after that is the 2002 policy. We again have a policy in the year 2012. We'll discuss about it in the later part of time. So as of now, what we can see, that this particular national water policy, which was in furtherance to the 87 policy, identified, the previous policy also identified several issues and challenges with respect to development and management. And if you remember, 87 and that crucial point of time was the one when the concept of sustainable development also emerged. So it has been reviewed and dated, and here comes the final 2002 national water policy, which emphasized on information system. So that is a requirement which is necessary, because until unless you have a very standard, it is very difficult also to understand the nature of the problem that you're dealing with. And that's why this national policy emphasized on a standardized national information system, which should be established with a network of data. So data procurement, integration and strengthening of existing central as well as state level agencies is required. And that's why improvising the quality of the data and processing capabilities have been emphasized. And that's why more emphasis have been given for improvement of information system. And that's why they have emphasized on standards for coding, classification, process of data and methods, etc. So an exchange of information, free exchange of information because several agencies are involved. See, we have irrigation department, we have water resources, Ministry of Shipping, inland water, so on and so forth. And we have also several boards, the several boards and bodies created. Like for example, we have Ganga River Management Authority. Then we have say Brahmaputra River Board, so on and so forth. So like this, we have several other agencies which are pretty much upgraded with the knowledge and technological capacity. So that is required, and at the same point of time, this policy is asking for an integration of this information, proper exchange of information, which is required in a way. So that's why information system is one of the elements of the 2002. Water resource planning is another element which is in fact required, and this policy is all about planning management, right? So the non-conventional methods for utilization of water, like for example interbasin transfers, artificial recharge of groundwaters, desalination of brackish or seawater, and even traditional water conservations like rainwater harvesting and all, rooftop rainwater harvesting, that is required to be practiced. In furtherance to the previous policy, they have emphasized, and there is a need to be practiced to further the increased, to increase the utilization of water resources. So they have this policy also emphasized on promotion of frontier research and development, which is focused on these techniques, non-conventional methods of utilization of water, right? Be it interbasin transfers, as I've mentioned, any other artificial recharge of groundwater, desalination of brackish water, rainwater harvesting, etc., etc. So water resources development and management will have to be planned for a hydrological unit, and that's why they have emphasized on the same that the drainage basins such as the whole or sub-basin multi-sectorally, taking into account the surface and groundwater for sustainable use, incorporating the quantity and quality aspects, as well as the environmental considerations. So whatever development projects and proposals that you're formulating, they should keep in mind, they should have very overall plan in, keeping in mind the existing agreements or or any existing framework with respect to basin management or sub-basin management, so that they can have a best possible combination of options before they go ahead with it. So they cannot just blindly, and when I'm saying they, I mean the state agencies, they cannot just blindly go ahead and adopt some planning or development mechanism without considering the pre-existing environmental pre-existing agreements or arrangement that is already there in place with respect to basin. So this is a significant part. In addition to that, institutional mechanism. Now, organizations play a very significant role, in planning, development, and management. And in a view to give effective planning, development, and management of water resources on a hydrological unit basis, not just sectoral approach or a multidisciplinary approach, even participatory approach is required, and an integration is required from qualitative and quantitative aspects. And let's not forget the environmental aspects. So the existing institutions in various levels in a decentralized framework that we have in our country, we do also have to check with whether how far these sectors are pretty much efficient. And when you talk about efficiency, we do also have several problems relating to budgeting. So for maintenance of water resource schemes under non-planned budget, it is generally being neglected. So an institutional arrangement should be such that this vital aspect is given importance, so that these several authorities which are in place, water resources sector, which are needs to be appropriately reoriented and reorganized, and if so required even created, so that this institutional arrangement can give some equal and even more emphasis on new constructions of a water related framework in our country. So this is something which we have, in fact this policy also emphasized on the existing agreements or awards of the tribunals, or even relevant laws, its scopes and powers of river basin organization. As I've mentioned a while back, that we have several river basin authorities. For example, with respect to river Ganga, we have one. So we have to keep that thing in mind when we wish to take or prepare any comprehensive plan. So this multidisciplinary nature of water resource management is crucial only when you take into consideration all the factors, at the same point of time, be it a judicial or quasi-judicial, to be very specific, or any legislative, or even any entry framework which is already in existence. Another element that we have under the water policy of 2002 is with respect to water allocation priorities. Now, this is something, the priorities has been set by this policy framework in planning and operation of systems. So this is how it goes, that it should be broadly followed like this: that drinking water has been given a very highest priority, followed by irrigation. This is not a hierarchy though, but the thing is that these are priorities in a way. They haven't said it as a hierarchy, like drinking water first, then irrigation, then hydropower, ecology and all. But these are all the operation systems which in fact, water allocation, when you're talking about allocating water, of course drinking water gets is first priority because that is required the most, and then irrigation because your agriculture is dependent on it, hydropower because you're referring to power generation, so power projects plays a very significant role in developmental activities, and ecological, which in fact refers to the environmental aspects, agro industries and non-agriculture industries, navigations and other users, they come in the later in the list. So this priorities could be modified, it could be added if warranted by the area or regional specific considerations. It can be like it is no straight jacket thing of it. It depends upon which area you're talking about, which region you're talking about. If a particular region requires drinking water to be the highest priority, it should be set like that. Irrigation to be the next, that is what it is. If it's an agro-based state, then for them, of course, irrigation will be a comparatively higher priority in comparison to hydropower or ecology. Navigation, for example, if that state is totally landlocked and there is no question of navigation, other uses, so that priority won't be there in that. So this is something which has to be set based on the. Hi there, students. In today's lecture, I wish to discuss about climate law. Now, when it comes to climate-related laws or international legal framework, the first and foremost thing that should come in your mind is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which I've already mentioned in the class, right? An outcome of the Rio Summit. And when this particular framework convention was adopted, from its very preliminary stage, there were certain challenges. And it's been 25 odd years, and there were several such important milestones in this entire history of international climate change policy. And it all started about way back in 1988. And this lecture will give you the infographic representation of that entire event. Now let's start with the first and foremost thing, which in fact happened way back in 1988, in November 1988, when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was established, and it was the World Meteorological Organization and United Nations Environment Program. Now the thing is that when it comes to UNEP and WMO, they were the one who took the initiative with respect to climate change, and this body was created, this IPCC, and later on, even now, IPCC plays a very significant role in with respect to research related information. They come up with this annual reports and as well as interim reports, and these reports are very significant because they are relied by the Conference of Parties to take certain major decisions with respect to climate change. So the WMO and UNEP was the one which established this IPCC, and several such assessment reports have been published, which in fact is regarded as scientific underpinning of international negotiation. And it also provides several insights with respect to several risks associated with climate change, which includes disasters also at the same point of time. And you know what? In the same year, NASA scientist James Hansen also testifies to United States Senate that man-made global warming has begun. Now, moving to the next event, which was way back in the year 1990, just 2 years after that, when, because in between, IPCC also came up with its first World Conference when it was established, the WMOU, and it was in fact established in the first World Conference on climate. The second World Climate Conference, in fact, was very significant because in that particular conference, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released its first assessment report, and the title of that report was "Emissions Resulting from Human Activities are Substantially Increasing the Atmospheric Concentrations of Greenhouse Gases." Sorry, this was not the title of the assessment report. This is what the assessment report identified. So emissions resulting from human activities are substantially increasing the atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases, leading to call for IPCC and the World Conference for a global treaty. So that was the beginning. And in fact, the next year, the United Nations General Assembly negotiation on Framework Convention began. And it was on December 11, 1990, when UN General Assembly established this Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee. And this committee was assigned the responsibility to adopt, draft this Framework Convention on Climate Change. In fact, there were 5 sessions which were conducted by the Intergovernmental Negotiation Committee. And this committee, which in fact was comprising of several important member states, around 150 states, discussed the binding commitments, targets, timetables for emission reductions, financial mechanisms, technology transfer. And we be very clear with this one thing, that these things which we can notice over here, see, be it with respect to emission reductions, or financial mechanisms, technology transfer, and when it comes to commitments, binding commitments, all these became the elements of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. So when you refer the document, the Framework Convention on Climate Change, Article 4 clearly signifies these commitments. And there you will find adaptation-related commitments, mitigation-related commitments, finance-related commitments, technology transfer-related commitments, capacity-building-related commitments. And all these are based on this principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, which I have already discussed in the initial lectures of environmental law. Thereafter, in May 1992, the convention was finally adopted. The text of the Framework Convention was adopted in New York, and the same year, President Bush and Yeltsin declared formal end to the Cold War. Here, Bush means the senior Bush. And finally, again, in June 1992, it was opened for signature at Rio Summit, and this was a very milestone, event, because the same year as there were other 2 sister conventions which also came to reality. One is the Convention on Biodiversity, or so-called Biological Diversity, and the Convention to Combat Desertification. That is what it is. And those who are from 90s, like me, the 90s kids, they must be aware of Steffi Graf, the tennis Steffi Graf, as well as Andrea Agassi. I remember watching them. So tennis couple Steffi Graf and Andrea Agassi also sweep Wimbledon single titles back in that year. So this is a very good thing that I have noticed in this infographic. It's very nice, very interesting in a way. Thereafter, in 1994, 2 years after that, the UNFCCC finally entered into force, and this Conference of Parties, which is the chief decision-making of body, which usually meets annually, and there are now around 196 parties to this particular convention, which sits and negotiates several aspects relating to climate change, and that is what it is. Brazil wins record 4th FIFA World Cup that year. Thereafter, the next year, the first COP, the Conference of Parties, and you can see, I hope you will recognize this lady. She's quite old now, right? I know. I'm pretty sure you have already recognized her. That's Angela Merkel. She was the one who presided over the first Conference of Parties in Berlin. Back then, she was Germany's environment minister. So see, those who says that there is no future for environmental law students, I'll tell them, see, environment minister became something great in the later point of time. So you never know, right? So the Germany's the then environment minister Angela Merkel presided over the first Conference of Parties in Berlin, where the parties also agreed that the commitments in the conventions were inadequate for meeting the convention's objectives. So they came up with something called the Berlin Mandate. And this Berlin Mandate, in fact, established a process to negotiate very strong commitment with some binding impact. And, this is the one, the Berlin Mandate, which became, you can say this is something which you might, find it, it's a fair criticism, although the Kyoto Protocol, which in fact was an outcome of this Berlin Mandate only. It was the groundwork of the Berlin Mandate to come up with this Kyoto Protocol at a later point of time. It was just for the interest of the developed countries, and it's very much incentive oriented, market oriented, because it gave birth to market based mechanisms. Because they did realize that just the principles are not enough until unless there is some incentive associated with all these commitments. Otherwise, no one is going to go ahead and come up with something like that. Same year, the Toy Story first ever full-length computer animated film released. Oh yeah, it's Toy Story 1. Anyways, so August 1996, this is their secretariat, which was previously in Geneva. It moved to Bonn in that year. Subsequently, in 1997, the Kyoto Protocol was adopted, and this the third conference of parties, which in fact achieved a historical milestone with the adoption of Kyoto Protocol, which is the world's first greenhouse gas emissions reduction treaty. Subsequently, several such important and significant milestones were also achieved. In fact, the major breakthrough which was achieved was in the second part of the sixth COP, the COP6, where the government reached into a conclusion where they will have a broad political agreement on operational rule book for the Kyoto Protocol. So this was important, and it's mostly of the developed countries. The seventh COP, the COP6, is very important because that gave birth to Marrakesh Accords. Now, Marrakesh Accords is important because this particular accord is very much significant with the implementation, the operationalization of those market-based mechanisms which were adopted in Kyoto Protocol. And basically, there were three market-based mechanisms which were adopted in Kyoto Protocol. See, the international emission trading, the clean development mechanism, and the joint implementations. So in Kyoto Protocol, they became very significant, with respect to that. Subsequently, European Union came forward, and European Union adopted this emission trading scheme, which was the first and the largest emission trading scheme in the world, which in fact launched a major pillar for EU climate policy. And there were several such installations which were also required by the schemes, which were collectively responsible to close to the half of EU emissions of CO2. So ECTS or EU ETS at that point of time, that became a very, it became a role model for international emission trading scheme in the near future. So that's how it started. Now, in addition to that, the Kyoto Protocol, when it finally took a very long time, as you can see, it was adopted way back in 1997, and see, I'm just going back to that particular point. In 1997, it was adopted. However, when it comes to its implementation, it took almost more than a decade, because this is something which is quite crucial, because in 2005 finally the Kyoto Protocol was adopted, and came into force, and in fact it was a very significant thing, because there were a lot of disagreement over the Kyoto Protocol and all those market-based mechanisms, which we'll discuss in the subsequent lectures. So this is something which is a very important year, 2005 February 16th, with respect to climate change. Thereafter, in Montreal, COP11, the Kyoto Protocol, which came and subsequently, in the same year, in 2005 December, in COP11 for the first time, the first conference of parties, and the first conference of parties serving as meeting to the parties. Now, here is the thing. I'll tell you one thing. As you can see, COP was already there in existence with the UNFCCC coming into force, and when it comes to the Kyoto Protocol, which was finally it came into force on February 16, 2005. So there was just like you have COP for UNFCCC for the protocol, because Kyoto Protocol was protocol to the Framework Convention. For Kyoto Protocol and its strict implementation, they also have this chief decision making body, and that chief decision making body is CMP in short. Conference of the Parties, serving as meeting of the parties. So CMP every year since then. Since 2005. So when COP11 was going on, CMP1, then COP12, CMP2, COP13, CMP3, so on and so forth. So that is how it is with respect to Montreal Protocol. Sorry, with respect to Kyoto Protocol, my bad. Subsequently, all these market-based mechanisms kind of widened, and a lot of discussions and deliberations happened over its implementation, how countries are going ahead with it with respect to CDM and all. We'll have detailed discussions in the days to come, hopefully. But the thing is that because it's a specialization paper, so in order to get into it, you should read also more about it. So I'll also share some material on CDM and other market-based mechanisms. Now, in addition to that, I mean, besides these market-based mechanisms, there are several other aspects of climate change, legal instruments, and this legal framework. And with respect to that, there are two subsidiary bodies, which I think I have already mentioned. One is the subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice, and this subsidiary body is responsible for, scientific aids and advice from time to time. And there is something called Nairobi Work Program also, which was adopted in 2006 in Nairobi. And this Nairobi Work Program is quite significant because this Nairobi Work Program elaborates further with respect to several other, adaptation and mitigation related decisions. Along with that, I'll discuss all these milestones one after another. Today, I'm just giving you the infographic. I'll discuss about Nairobi Work Program, Marrakesh Accords, Bali, in a very short and abridged fashion in this online lecture mode only. Then comes the Bali Action Plan, so-called the Bali Roadmap. This was the outcome of COP13, and this Bali Action Plan is regarded as one of the significant keystones of UNFCCC because their countries, they discussed with respect to four important elements: mitigation, adaptation, technology, and financing, and it happened in the year 2007 December. Subsequently, joint implementation, which was another market-based instrument of Kyoto Protocol, that also turned out to be a reality in January 2008. Soon thereafter, with respect to technology, Poznan in Poland, the COP14 gave birth to this Poznan strategic program on technology transfer, where the full emphasis were given with respect to sharing of certain technology which are climate resilient in nature from developed to developing countries. Then comes the Copenhagen. The Copenhagen Accord, in fact, is a very significant one because world leaders, when they gathered in Copenhagen for 15th COP in Denmark, then they came up with this Copenhagen Accord. And if you remember, I mentioned that China and US had some trouble as regards the same, and Hillary Clinton was there, and she somehow managed to convince them, and they used the term voluntary contributions, and finally China agreed. And in this Copenhagen Accord, the developed countries, they pledged, in fact, to raise up to 30 billion US dollars for climate finance for a period of 2010 and 2012, but unfortunately, I don't think it ever happened. The Cancun Agreement is significant because COP16's Cancun Agreement emphasized more on climate finance, Green Climate Fund. It also worked on something called adaptation, which I've already mentioned. There's something called Cancun Adaptation Framework. It was an outcome of Cancun Agreement only, and technology transfer. So these were adaptation, technology, and finance. These were kind of dealt, and that's how they came up with the GCF, Green Climate Fund, technology mechanism, because they already had Poznan previously, and then they have this technology mechanism, and then came the Cancun adaptation framework, focusing on adaptation. And yeah, the tallest man-made structure, Burj Khalifa, also opened in Dubai the same year, December 2010. The subsequent year was again significant because from here, the Paris thing started. Paris thing in the sense, the Paris Agreement. This was the platform for Paris Agreement. In COP17, they did realize, because they set a target. There was a entire time period, like by 2012, the second commitment period, and then 2015. By 2015, they should have something, and so that they can start working on that. Because what will happen after 2020? Because the second commitment period was getting over. So they have to, by 2015, they have to adopt, because the second commitment period was over in 2015. So they had 5 years also at the same point of time. So COP17, where the governments in fact committed to a new universal climate change agreement by 2015 for a period which will be implemented after 2020. And for this, they came up with this ad hoc working group on Durban Platform for Enhanced Action. And this ADP was given the responsibility to set the stage and framework for the future. And that's how the Paris Agreement came into reality. Subsequently, the so-called the Momentum for Climate launched at the COP17 in Durban. a very bright shape, and several innovative and transformative climate-related actions were also kind of portrayed in this particular COP. But subsequently in Doha, in fact, there's something called Doha Amendment, which was focusing on Kyoto Protocol and was focusing on a universal climate change agreement that has to be adopted by 2015, and that will scale up the efforts before 2020. So this Doha was also kind of emphasizing on Paris and the aspects of Kyoto Protocol, because three market-based mechanism was already there, and it needs to be taken forward. In order to take it forward, something needs to be done. So that's how the Doha Amendment also kind of addressed the issue. Subsequently, the Secretariat, it shifted to Bonn once again. Sorry, it shifted from Geneva to Bonn, and the new headquarters was again, I believe it was UNFCCC Secretary Moses' new headquarters on UN campus in Bonn, next to the former. Okay, it's just a mere shifting of Secretariat's office, so nothing much. The fifth assessment, the second part of the fifth assessment report of IPCC was released in 2013, the physical science basis. That is what the report's title is. And this fifth assessment report played a very significant role also for significant role for the future climate related measures. So that's how it is, and that's how it all started. So in addition to some of these important aspects, there are other elements which in fact plays a very significant role. And so then IPCC also released its second part of the fifth assessment report, which was also quite significant with respect to all the major changes that were happening in the climate. It's very much scientific in nature, and so on and so forth. Like this Warsaw outcome is something which is again quite important. This was the outcome of the COP19. The Warsaw outcome is important because it focused on loss and damage, like climate-related disasters and all. At the same point of time, it emphasized on RED. I don't know if you've heard about it, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, commonly known as REDD. So there was a rule book on RED, which was introduced in Warsaw Outcome, as well as they emphasized on a long-term plan with respect to loss and damage. Yes, 20th anniversary of UNFCCC in 2014. Then some of the other significant major milestones. Once again, another assessment report which emphasized on vulnerabilities and its impact of several activities, human activities. Then I believe, yes, Lima, which was a 20th COP, it is again another milestone, because here they all kind of push for a collective international. So all these things, universal agreement. So all these things were going towards the direction of climate Paris Agreement. In fact, climate change was talk of the town, and they were all going in this direction of Paris Agreement. And finally, in COP21, the Paris Agreement, so-called the historical Paris Agreement, was adopted with 195 nations who agreed to combat climate change and unleash action and invest towards a low-carbon, resilient, and sustainable future on 12th of December 2015. And the rest is the very recent history. And thereafter, I don't know how many of you followed, COP22, Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action, was launched. Then in 2017 in Bola, in COP23, when they decided over the issues relating to small island states, because they were very much concerned about it, the small island nations. In fact, in this COP, it was presided over by small island countries only, the presidency of Fiji. And then a launchpad for higher ambition, COP23. So a lot of talk been happening as regards this, and this COP23's launchpad was also known as the Talanoa Dialogue. It was basically to help set the stage for revising the upwards of national climate action plans, which was needed to put forward world, on track to meet pre-2020 emissions.
So this is how it is, and now all these things are happening up lately, and these are some of the major events where they are all thinking about how to bring this Paris Agreement into reality. They are talking about bringing the global temperature 1.5 degrees Celsius by 1.5 degrees Celsius, and if you follow every day something or the other is happening, and every year, and say 2018 you have this Katowice climate package emphasized on operationalizing the climate change regime which was contained in the Paris Agreement, and also promoted international cooperation and greater ambition in a way. Then Africa Climate Week of 2019 last year, which was the regional climate week, the African Climate Week of Accra, which was the first regional climate. It provided encouragement to implementation of this NDCs. The thing is that before Paris Agreement, the countries were asked to submit a document that what they are planning to do, what are their commitments related plan, by which year they will be able to reduce up to what percentage of emissions. So that was known as intended nationally determined contributions. And once the Paris Agreement came to reality, then it became NDCs, the nationally determined contribution. So this is also now kind of clubbed, and it kind of interjected with the 2030 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's taking a very wider approach at the same point of time. This time it was the Latin America and Caribbean Climate Week. Like last time it was the African one, and in August 2019 this is what had happened. And like this, then the Asia Pacific Climate Week, September 2019. So to focus on regional aspects, and then they also kind of integrated United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the 2030 goals, and then the Paris Agreement, and then also the United Nations Secretary General's Climate Action Summit to boost ambition. This is a very nice roadmap that they have set with respect to climate change. So this is all that I have for in the infographics. This is all the UNFCCC also portrays in their website. I insist just have a look at it. I'm just setting the stage for the climate law. And in the subsequent lecture, I'll touch upon some of these important elements and some of the salient features of these major decisions, be it Warsaw Outcome, be it Poznan, be it Bali Action Plan, or Cancun. So maybe this month I'll invest my time and lectures on the climate related framework. So that is what I have for you in this particular segment. So just go through that, and I'll also share some materials as regards the particular topic. So take care of yourself, take care of your family, stay safe, stay home. Thank you very much. So in the next class, I'll touch upon some other facets relating to climate change.
Hi there, students. In furtherance to this lecture that we have started on comparative pollution laws, well, today I wish to discuss about the Canadian pollution laws and regulations. In the previous lecture, we have discussed, I believe, China, and now we have decided to. I have decided to pick Canada as a case study here, because I came across this Canadian legislations, and they have several regulations. In fact, they have very much gases and in fuel specific legislation to combat the pollution. So let's have a look at it. When it comes to the Canadian environmental legislation, in fact, they are pretty much proactive, and you will find, and that's what I also discovered. If you remember in one of the previous classes when we discussed about environment impact assessment, and if you remember, it was United States which came up with this EIA law for the very first time way back in 1970s. And well, you will find that many of these legislation which Canada has, they are pretty much harmonized with the United States legislations. Canada came up with EI legislation 2 years after that. In 1973 only, Canada came up with the EI legislation. If I'm not wrong, maybe it was the second country to come up with EI law. So even with respect to pollution laws, when I was referring to all of them, most of them are in very much proper harmony with the they have been enacted in such a way that it all harmonizes the American laws. So when it comes to the law of the land, the Constitution Act of 1867 of Canada, it clearly enshrines that its legislative authority, it's been divided. It's very much federal in nature. So they have a federal government, a federal legislature, and then they have the provincial legislature. Now, when it comes to challenges relating to environment, and especially with respect to pollution, it is related to climate change, right? And we all know that under the climate change regime, China, and of course when it comes to this side, Canada, not China in this case, of course, I mean the Canada played a very significant role. And Canada, in fact, they have adopted several such measures. They are also signatory to the Paris Agreement. They have in fact ratified the same in 2016. And the target that they have set in their NDC, so called the, if you remember, the nationally determined contribution, it was to reduce economy-wide greenhouse gases emissions by 30% below 2005 levels, and by 2030, that's what the target that they have set. So that is the reason because of which they ratified and they adopted this pan-Canadian framework on clean growth and climate change. Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change. It is the federal government's plan primarily to meet the end of the Paris Agreement, to meet its emission reduction target and grow the economy, which they have set out in their nationally determined contributions to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So the central element of this particular framework is the commitment of pricing the carbon pollution across the country by 2018, and in order to implement that, which the commitment that they have made under the Paris Agreement, the government have set out several actions which has outlined the pan-Canadian framework, and it has been kind of supported by several federal investments which was announced in their budgetary allocation in 2017. And thereafter the Canada in fact went ahead and it also became party to Climate and Clean Air Coalition to reduce short-lived climate pollutants, which is of course a voluntary initiative basically aimed to produce the environment and public health and addressing the climate change. Now, when it comes to environmental law, the specific legislation that they have is the Canadian Environment Protection Act of 1999, CEPA in short. Now, CEPA, well, just like our Environment Protection Act. This is their major federal legislation with respect to combating pollution and protecting the environment. So in the very federal level, they have something called Environment Climate Change Canada, also known as ECCC, and Transport Canada, TC. So Environment Climate Change Canada and Transport Canada, they have the mandate to regulate the emissions with respect to all these engines, especially the internal combustion engines, which are responsible for pollution. And under the CEPA, so-called Central Canadian Environment Protection Act, the Environment Canada, they have the authority, the so-called the ECCC has the authority to regulate the emissions for all these on-road engines as well as for off-road engines also, most of the categories especially. In fact, the CEPA also transfers the legislative authority for regulating these emissions from on-road engine vehicles and engines to Environment Canada from Transport Canada's Motor Vehicle Safety Act. And when it comes to Transport Canada, it's on the other hand has the responsibility to regulate the emissions for aircrafts, for railways, for commercial marine vehicles. So ECCC, most of the on-roads and off-roads engine combustions regulations, and TC on the other hand looks into the aircraft, railways, as well as the marine vehicle vessels. So the Canadian federal government, they have this clear fact. Now with respect to that, they also have issued the regulations to control the emissions of the air pollutants. It is known as the criteria air contaminants. Now, this criteria air contaminants covers the nitrous oxides, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, several suspended particulate matters, and the greenhouse gases. So, generally, this all these laws that they have adopted, you will find that they are pretty much they have harmonized their emission standards with the United States Environment Protection Agency. In fact, this is what the similarity that you will find. The US, they have also this federal agenda on cleaner vehicles, engines, and fuels. Similarly, they have also adopted these ECCC and TC. And then the criteria air contaminants. Now, in addition to that, there is something called National Pollutant
release inventory. Now, this national pollutant release inventory, it basically tracks the pollution in Canada. It provides a very publicly accessible inventory of pollutants which are released in air, in water, in land, which can also be disposed, which are also transferred for recycling. So they prepare this inventory of pollutants, commonly known as the National Pollutant Release Inventory. Now, in addition to that, this national pollutant release inventory, it also covers the information relating to the annual emissions from the side of the industrial facilities. They usually publish it, and it's the Environment Canada, the ECCC, which publishes it, and this is published under the SEPA, of course, which was adopted way back in 1999. So the National Pollutant Release Inventory also includes the emissions of air emission standards, air emissions estimates, sorry, whether it has been complied or not. All these things are pretty much mentioned in there. You will also find the other point sources like non-industrial sources like motor vehicles and all. That data is also there with NPRI, so called the National Pollutant Release Inventory. And this inventory also provides the information which are basically used to identify and monitor the sources of pollution in Canada. And thereafter they develop certain indicators for the quality of water, quality of land, quality of air, and they thereafter evaluate how much to be released, how much to be transferred, etc., etc. So this is a very combined information which they kind of it's a very well strategized mechanism that they have adopted in order to identify and take necessary actions from time to time, so that they can set out their priorities with respect to environment, that they can also implement the policy initiatives and by undergoing proper risk assessment measures. So this is something which there with respect to the National Pollutant Release Inventory. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to emission standards, there are several regulations that I came across. Now, with respect to the greenhouse gases emissions, GHG emissions or anthropogenic gases emissions, the federal government of Canada, they have set out two categories, in fact, and this is pretty much harmonized with the United States standards. For them, they have something called the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. So, in the same line, they also adopted the standards and regulations for greenhouse emissions, and they have categorized it. They have something for the light duty vehicles and they have something for heavy duty vehicles. Now, for light duty vehicles, they have this particular regulations known as passenger automobile and light truck greenhouse gas regulations. Once again, I repeat it: passenger automobile and light truck greenhouse gas regulations, SOR 2010-201. So this is from 2010. This regulation was basically issued in October 2010, and if you refer to that, the prime objective of this regulation is to reduce the GHGs from passenger automobiles, from light trucks, and in order to do that, this regulation also enable the authorities to establish certain emission standards and certain testing procedures, which are of course once again in proper alignment with the federal requirements that is there in United States. So you will find a lot of influence that is there in Canadian pollution laws, and this influences of course the United States legislations, federal legislations to be very specific. In fact, these regulations, they basically prescribe all these, annual emission standards from time to time for the new model of vehicles. Especially, there is one already in existence for all the vehicles which were manufactured from 2001 to 2016. So, the roles and responsibilities of the manufacturers and the importers are also there, that has been taken into consideration. So, the manufacturers and the importers, they have to also meet all these standards which has been clearly specified. These regulations in fact require the importers, the manufacturers to meet these fleet average greenhouse gas emissions as specified for particular vehicles from time to time, which runs on the emissions on methane and nitrous oxides, and which which emits methane and nitrous oxides. So there is a specific standards for emissions of methane and nitrous oxides. So this is something which I have clearly mentioned. Now, there were certain amendments which were also adopted subsequently
2010 October it was issued, but in 2014 there were certain amendments which in fact established something called progressively more stringent annual fleet average GHG standards, and this was for period of 2017 to 2025 model years. So this amended regulation in fact included that whatever the cars which is going to be manufactured between 2017 to 2025, they are all required to achieve an average 5% annual reduction in GHG emissions. As for the light trucks as for the light trucks goes, they have typically, which are used by farmers in Canada, even by the construction workers. They are also equally important as they have been specified, and this regulation in fact provides a very short-term relief in form of a less aggressive annual reductions. So these light trucks will be required to achieve in an average of 3.5 annual GHG reductions for a model year of 2017 to 2021, and then again subsequently, so initially 5 years, it will be more like 4 years to be very specific, it will be 3.5% annual GHG emission reduction, but subsequently from 2025 to 2020, 2022 to 2025, it will be 5% reduction. So this in fact gives very much enough time to all those manufacturing companies to come up with certain technology, to find out a technological solution to reduce the emissions. So this is a push that they have generated, push for these manufacturers to consider, to think over, and to come up with something which is far more energy efficient and pretty much less emitting in nature. In addition to this light vehicles, you also have this heavy duty vehicle and engine greenhouse gas emission regulation, SOR 2013-24. This came in the year 2013, and it kind of sets out very performance based greenhouse gas emission standards for on-road heavy duty vehicles like tractors, heavy tractors, highway tractors, buses, dump trucks, etc., which are made in 2014 and subsequently. So this is applicable for those vehicles. Now these standards and procedures are once again in alignment with the federal regulations of United States. So this is basically for on-road heavy-duty vehicles, and please do refer to that. Here, what they have done is they have decided to apply this new regulation for model year 2018 to 2027. So for light-duty vehicle, it was, if you remember, it was till 2025. Right, and from 2017 to 2025, but for heavy duty vehicles, they have kept the model year as 2018 to 2027. When it comes to smoke related emission regulations, there is something called on-road vehicle and engine emissions regulation, which was promulgated under the the Canadian Environment Protection Act of 1999 only. This basically sets out several smog related air pollutant emission standards for passenger cars, light duty trucks, motorcycles, heavy duty vehicles, etc., which are of course these engines which were started manufacturing in 2004 model year. So 2004 model year are regulated by this particular on-road vehicle and engine regulations, engine emission regulations, and this regulation is once again it is pretty much in compliance with the 2004 EPA standards of United States, where they have this phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 was US 2004, phase 2 was 2007 for heavy duty vehicles, and phase 1 was also for the medium and the light duty. So this is pretty much, the Canadian legislations are pretty much in they draw all their inspiration from the United States and they harmonize it accordingly. There were certain subsequent amendments which came in this particular regulation in 2015 with respect to the on-road vehicle and engine emission regulations. They harmonized the Canadian requirements with the United States EPA Tier 3 emission regulation or Tier 3 emission regulation, which starting from the model year they fixed this time as 2017. So there were certain key regulations which kind of they have generated. So they brought very tighter Tier 3 emission standards. They decided to phase in with all these 2017 model year vehicles, and they want to implement them fully by 2025. And the standard that they have decided is like they have standard at up to 80% and 70% for more volatile, organic compounds, nitrogen oxide, etc., particulate matter, etc., and more stringent evaporative emission standards also at the same point of time. They have also insisted to a system of generating, banking, and trading emission credits also, with the possibility of early credit, which will start from 2015, which started from 2015 model year itself. So these are some of the factors which they have taken into consideration with respect to their on-road vehicle and engine emission regulations. Now, in addition to that, there are also certain sets of gas-specific, certain GHG-specific regulations, like they have gasoline regulations, sulfur in diesel fuel regulations, sulfur in gasoline regulations, benzene in gasoline regulations, renewable fuel energy regulations, and Canadian ambient air quality standards 2002. Now, when it comes to the reduction of the carbon dioxide emissions from coals, they also have another regulation from 2012. So they adopted this the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions from coal fired generation of electricity regulations, and this regulation set out a very stringent performance standard for the coal-fired electricity generation units, and this is where you will find most of the industries will come into play. And all those industries which are coal-fired, they are regulated by the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions from coal-fired generation of electricity regulations of 2012. This regulation is a performance standard regulation, as I've already mentioned. So there are certain criteria that they have clearly set out with respect to the carbon dioxide gases and all the emissions which are pretty much there as regards the same. And they have also specified the performance standard timeline, which is pretty much continuing till 2029. And there were certain amendments also which came in the year 2018 with respect to the coal-fired electricity generating units to comply with certain energy performance performance standards of 420 metric tons of carbon dioxide per gigawatt hour of electricity produced by 2030 at the latest. So they are emphasizing a lot to reach their goal to reduce their emissions, as they have mentioned in their nationally determined contributions to in Paris Agreement. With respect to all these other regulations that I have mentioned, they come under the full quality standards. The gasoline regulation is there, which in fact limits the concentration of lead in the gasoline, which are usually produced, imported, sold, or even offered in sale in Canada. So in order to regulate that, they have this particular gasoline regulations. And in fact, this regulation also emphasizes on record keeping, on reporting obligations of leaded gasolines from time to time. And however, the gasolines which are used for aircrafts are exempted from this regulation, and the leaded gasoline which are used in competition vehicles like those F1, racing. You know that, right? So for all those racing competitions, the competition vehicles, they are not subject to this particular regulations. Now, in addition to that, you have a sulfur and diesel fuel regulation, which in fact sets a very maximum limit of sulfur and diesel fuel for the use of all those on-road vehicles, and they have specifically ensured a limit in that. They have set up a limit of 50 milligram per kilogram for all those on-road diesel fuel run vehicles. And sulfur in gasoline regulation, they have also limited the standard of sulfur in the gasoline to 14 milligram per kilogram starting from January 2017, and it kind of, they have specified a time and they have decided that this particular amount should be reduced. So for sulfur in diesel fuel engines, that they have set out that it's currently, if I'm not wrong, 15 milligrams per kilogram, and they'll reduce it. But when it comes to the sulfur in gasoline engine, then they have decided currently, which is I believe 14 milligram per kilogram, but by 2020, so I think by end of this year, they have to reduce it by 12 milligram per kilogram. This is what the sulfur in gasoline regulations clearly specifies. And finally, then you have this benzene in gasoline regulations. And benzene in gasoline regulation, in fact, this also sets out the limit of benzene that are used in gasoline, and they are pretty much this regulation also prohibit the sale of gasoline which are used in a particular having vehicles which where the concentration of the benzene in the gasoline is more than 1.5%. So this is something which they have clearly set out. They have also set out the limits for benzene emissions number, which are kind of related to gasoline composition to predicted emissions of benzene from gasoline powered vehicles. So this is what they have done. And when it comes to other new and renewable energy, Canada is not left behind. In fact, there is something called renewable fuel regulations, which they have also adopted in 2010. This renewable fuel regulation, this is a federal law,
And in fact, it requires all the fuel producers and importers to have an average renewable fuel content of at least 5% based on the volume of gasoline that they are producing or importing into Canada, and of at least 2% based on the volume of diesel fuel and heating distillate oil that can produce or that are produced or imported in Canada. So these are basically to govern the all these limits relating to use of certain gasolines, and use of the diesel fuels, the volume of use of diesel fuels. So they're pretty much technical in nature, but pretty much clear also at the same point of time. So the Canadian government, in a way, they want to promote the clean fuel standard. Yeah, they want to promote clean energy, so that's why they have placed this clean fuel standard regulations. And this has been done, of course, under the aegis of Canadian Environment Protection Act of 1999, so that it can help Canada's reduction in their GHG emissions. And this is what they have. In fact, if you refer to this regulation, the Clean Renewable Fuel Regulations of 2010, the objective of this regulation is to achieve 30 megatons of annual reductions in GHG emissions by 2030. So they want to set a target. They have already set a target. They want to achieve the target of 30 megatons of annual reductions in GHG emissions by 2030 by contributing to Canada's effort to achieve its overall GHG mitigation target of 30% emissions reduction below 2005 level by 2030, which they have mentioned in their nationally determined contributions. So these are the laws that is there with respect to the pollution. But finally, there is something called, especially with respect to ozone layer. So here, in order to regulate the ozone standard, the Canada came up with Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards 2002. It's basically the driver for air quality management across Canada. It also refers to the depletion of ozone layer, and this is basically, this comes under this entire Canadian Ambient Air Quality Standards. It controls the entire air quality management across Canada, and they are agreed by the Canadian Council of Ministers and the Environment Agency, basically the Environment Ministry for Canada, which is of course an intergovernmental forum also for collective action on environmental issues of not just national but also international concerns. So these are all the ministers from federal government and 10 provincial governments and 3 territorial governments. They all come together at the congregation of all these ministers, just all in one, and they form this Canadian Council of Ministers of Environment. So besides the ministry that we have in our country, like Environment Protection Act, we know the central government is there, and then you have this Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. But we don't have anything like this, where of course we have representations. We have representations in our pollution control boards and several other, like wildlife protection board, etc., etc. But this is something which is very different, where I found the representation from federal government of all the ministers and 10 provincial governments and 3 territorial governments. So in a way, it is there, even we have, but this is exclusively for not just national but also international concerns. So this is the element of difference in here. So this air quality standards, which was established as a non-binding objective as per the Canadian Environment Protection Act, but at the same point of time, it's a collaborative effort. It's a collaborative national air quality management system, because the aim is to ensure a better environment and to protect the human health. So this is what it is, and this in fact has been developed with an idea to reduce all these emissions and to control and check all these other forms of gases like sulfur dioxide, particulate matters, and ozone, to be very specific. Industrial associations, NGOs, indigenous organizations, they also kind of participate in development and review of this particular collaborative national air quality management systems and standards from time to time. So this is what it is with respect to the Canadian law relating to pollutions. I hope you will also refer to these regulations, which are all available online, and just have a look at it. It is very much interesting, and you will find a lot of similarities which is there with respect to American legislations. In fact, I also got a lot of information through the internet only with respect to Canadian laws, and you can also find the same. It's there, and whatever I have mentioned here, you will find a reference of the same in there. So please do refer to that, and if you find any difficulty, you can write to me. I'll help you to get that. So just have a look at it, and
Just it will give you an idea about the comparative pollution laws. So this is all for Canadian pollution laws. In next class, I'll deal with some other facet of comparative environmental law. Until then, take care of yourself, take care of your family, stay safe, stay home. Thank you. Hi there, students. In the last lecture, I discussed about waste management law, and I believe if you watch this channel, YouTube channel, you will also come across an infographic on the 25 years of this evolution of international climate policy. Now, in today's lecture, I wish to discuss uh, climate law as since the inception of this entire international legal framework from the Framework Convention on Climate Change. In several occasions, I have referred to this Framework Convention on Climate Change in our previous discussions. So, in today's lecture, in the first part of this lecture, I'll discuss about some key principles and the crucial aspects relating to the commitments which have been pretty much clearly envisaged in the Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, if you refer to the preambular part of this particular convention, in fact, the thing is that these international legal instruments and their preambles usually they kind of focuses on several pre-existing acknowledges several pre-existing international legal instruments with respect to that area. It can be, say, for example, United Nations General Assembly resolution. It can be some other. Now, in the preamble part of the Framework Convention on Climate Change, which you already are aware, came in the year 1992 as an outcome of the Rio Summit. The parties to this particular convention clearly acknowledged the change in the climate of this planet and adverse effects of on this particular climate because of human activities, direct, indirect. So it is a prime concern of mankind, so called the common concern of mankind. So the first line of the convention itself highlights and acknowledges the change in the Earth's climate and the adverse effects, which is a common concern of mankind. If you remember, and I have discussed about something called common heritage of mankind, which was pretty much like, there in the United Nations Convention on Law of Seas. When it comes to this common concern of mankind, the amplitude of the same is even wider. It's not talk about a particular ecosystem or a particular species. It takes everything as a whole. So it's a matter of common concern that has been clearly highlighted in the preamble of the Framework Convention. Thereafter, the drafters have also expressed their concerns with respect to human activities, which has substantially enhanced over a period of time and led to the concentrations of anthropogenic greenhouse gases. And this increase in anthropogenic greenhouse gases, which of course, as you know, the scientific mechanism of greenhouse effect is responsible for the rise in the global temperature. In fact, the adverse effect on this environment is because of these anthropogenic gases and its release, which in fact resulted in an average additional warming of this planet's surface and the atmosphere. And it also may affect adversely the natural ecosystems and the humankind. So, environment as well as human health have been prime concerns for the particular convention and its drafters. In addition to that, the when it comes to historical background of the Framework Convention, they have also acknowledged the historical injustice in a way. Injustice in the sense, not that language which I'm mentioning here as injustice has not been used, but they have clearly noted that a larger share of this current global emissions and of course the historical global emissions of these greenhouse anthropogenic gases was originated from developed countries and their per capita emissions, which if you compare it with the developing countries, are relatively high
and the share of the global emissions, which basically are originating from these developed countries, will definitely has definitely contributed to this emissions. Escalation in the global temperature. And when it comes to the share of global emissions which are originating from developing countries, it will definitely grow in the days to come because they too also have to meet their socio-economic and development needs. So all the the historical aspects as well as the current and the future has been clearly highlighted in the preamble. So this is something which none of us can deny. This is a fact. So they were all aware of these things. In fact, besides this, an ecosystem approach has also been taken where the preamble highlighted the importance of marine ecosystem, the importance of terrestrial ecosystems, and the significance of sinks and reservoirs of these greenhouse gases in these ecosystems. And they have noted out that many such uncertainties in the prediction of climate change, especially with respect to the magnitude or the regional pattern, or even the timing, has significantly been a matter of great concern. And there's a lot of uncertainties which are still there. And these uncertainties is, of course, a clear indication that we have to remain prepared. We have to be very much precautious at the same point of time. Now, acknowledging the global nature of the climate change, which in fact has been clearly highlighted in the very initial preambular part, forces us to think about it. And this framework convention calls for a widest possible cooperation of all the countries, irrespective of their socio-economic differences. It also calls out for participation in an effective and appropriate international response, which should be, of course, in accordance with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, which I have mentioned, which I have already discussed in the initial lectures, offline lectures, of course, where if you remember, if you don't, then please do refer to the material that I've shared by Philip Sands on principles of international environmental law, the common but differentiated responsibility, right? The brunt should be borne by the developed countries. So this particular principle, the common but differentiated principle, and respective capabilities and their socio-economic conditions to be taken into consideration. The Framework Convention also recalls the pertinent provisions of the Stockholm Conference from 1972, 20 years back. From that point of time, it also recalls that the states have, of course, in accordance with the UN Charter, recognize all those principles, like the principle of equity, the principle of neighboring principle, in the sense the principle of permanent sovereignty and not to cause damage to your neighbors, also known as the neighboring principle, and of course the international cooperation, principle of sovereignty of states and international cooperation to address climate change. So these basic principles, which are also their part and parcel of the UN Charter, have been recognized under the preambular elements of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. Along with that, it has also recognized that the states should enact effective environmental legislations, in which they will adopt certain environmental standards, management objectives, priorities, which should reflect the developmental, environmental context to which they apply. And these standards are basically applied by some countries, which may be appropriate, and unwarranted economic and social costs to other countries, in particular developing countries, should be taken into account. So this element of differentiation is justified on the basis of the history and also keeping in mind the future. Uh, Along with that, several other UN resolutions, so-called United Nations General Assembly resolutions, were recognized, like 44-228 of 1989 and 44-206 of 1989, and then this 45-212 of 1990 and 4353 of 1988. These are all with respect to global climate for present and future generations of mankind. These resolutions are also emphasizing on environment and development. So, in addition to that, when it comes to 44-06 of 1999, that was especially with respect to rise in sea levels, which became a matter of great concern for island states and coastal states, because the coastals and the small island countries, geopolitically, they don't have that kind of influence, and at the same point of time, they are also very vulnerable to climate change. So this convention, in fact, recalled the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 44-06 of 1989, which was on possible adverse effect of sea level rise on islands and coastal areas, and also certain low-lying coastal areas. Along with that, the 44172 of 1998, 1989, which in fact deals with combating desertification, that has also been recalled by was also recalled by this particular framework convention on climate change. Another major international instrument which kind of was clear reflection of good international cooperation was the Vienna Convention for the Protection of Ozone Layer 1985 and the Montreal Protocol on Substances that Deplete the Ozone Layer of 1987, which was also further amended in 1990. These two legal instruments were also recalled by the framers of Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was basically for ozone to combat ozone depletion. Along with that, several other ministerial declaration of the Second World Climate Conference of 1990 was also kind of, and several other international organizations and bodies like World Meteorological Organization, then United Nations Environment Program, then Intergovernmental Plan on Climate Change. Their valuable analytical work has also been have been recognized by the drafters of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. Along with that, three important things were also recognized, which I would like to mention here. First and foremost is that in order to understand and address the climate change, there is a dire need for an environmentally, socially, and economically effective approach, which should be based on relevant scientific, technical, and economic considerations. And these considerations should not be just one-time job. It should be continuously re-evaluated from time to time. Along with that, the second thing is that the various actions to address climate change can be justified economically in their own right, and it can also help in solving other environmental problems. The third factor is recognizing the need for certain countries. Like, for example, on one side, you have the need for these developed countries to take immediate action in a flexible manner, of course, and at the same point of time, also to recognize the interests of small island, low lying countries, especially the developing countries whose economies are particularly developed, are dependent on conventional sources of energy like fossil fuels production. So, or even their use or exportations as a consequence of action that's been taken on limiting greenhouse gases. These countries, they have their respective approaches, and all their interests have to be taken into account. So when it comes to developed countries, upon them lies the responsibility to take immediate action in a flexible manner on the basis of clear priorities as a first step towards a very comprehensive response strategy, not in just their national level, but also in a global level. And if so possible, if they agree in a regional level, then that should also take into account all the greenhouse gases with due considerations of their relative contribution to the enhancement of greenhouse effect. When it comes to low-lying and other small island countries, these countries are like very much vulnerable. Even some of the developing countries, they have coastal areas, they have low-lying coastal, arid, semi-arid areas. They have also areas which are prone to floods, drought, desertifications, including India, for example. Despite the fact it's a developing country, it also has fragile mountainous ecosystems. So this is something which they have to take into consideration when they take any international measure. And when it comes to the special difficulties, especially the developing countries are facing, along with the vulnerabilities, is that of their economy. They are still dependent on available fossil fuel production, or maybe they export it or they use it and use it for economic benefit in a way. So this is something which is a very difficult factor because they have their respective approaches, the developed countries, and try to bring a consonance amongst these interests is the challenge which framework convention faced at that point of time. The Paris Agreement is facing this point during this point of time, and I'm pretty sure that this debate and negotiation will never stop because there are always certain on one side you will find people who are
talking about climate negotiation in a very pro-enviro angle. And there are also on the other side, we are talking about climate negotiation in a very economic oriented angle. But when it comes to the balance between these two, there comes the major challenge. So, in a way, the Framework Convention tries to balance this. They try to, understand and gather as well as adopt an approach which tries to balance, which tries to kind of mitigate, adapt all these challenges by taking something which will serve the interests of both. That is all global negotiation is, right? That is all negotiation is. So, this framework convention affirms this fact of the challenges associated with climate change. It also, affirm the fact that there is a dire need for a coordinated approach, an integrated approach to avoid further adverse effects on climate change. And there is also need to recognize that all countries, especially the developing countries, they need to access to resources which are required to achieve their sustainable socio-economic development. So, having determined all these things, and to protect the climate system of not just current generation but also future generation, this particular framework convention was adopted. There you will find that climate change has also been defined. Climate change basically, as per this particular framework convention, if you refer to Article 1, Clause 2 of UNFCCC, there you will find that climate change has been defined as the change which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of global atmosphere and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. So it's a means of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity. So human activity is responsible either directly or indirectly. And because of this human activity, there is an alteration in the composition of global atmosphere. Here they're referring to just atmosphere, but when you say atmosphere, of course, it in fact covers a lot, and which, in addition to natural climate variability, in fact covers a wider array of issues, climate-related issues. In fact, climate system, the term that they have used here in the Framework Convention, has also been defined as a totality of atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, geosphere, and their interactions. So the climate system, in fact, as a whole, has been taken into consideration. So where not just because if you look into the definition of adverse effects of climate change, that has also been defined under Article 1, Clause 1, that means the changes in the physical environment or biota, which is resulting from climate change, which have significant deleterious effects on compositions, resilience, or even productivity of natural and managed ecosystems, or any operation of socio-economic systems, or on human health and welfare. So climate systems basically, takes into consideration atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, geosphere, and their interactions, and their adverse effects basically means the change in the physical environment or biota resulting for climate change. Along with that, greenhouse gases has also been defined, which is not scientific though, but they have defined it. Emissions is another crucial definition, which you will find under the Framework Convention, which basically means the release of greenhouse gases and or their precursors into the atmosphere over a specific area and period of time. They haven't specified the exact time, like specified area and period of time. Besides this, three another definitions that you will come across here, which are important, is the reservoir, sink, and sources. These are basically the components of climate change in a way, where you'll find these greenhouse gases are stored, like forests, for example. Forests are carbon sinks, right, or carbon reservoirs. And because of the normal scientific phenomena, that they inhale CO2 and they exhale oxygen. So carbon dioxides and other greenhouse gases are kind of stored in these reservoirs and in these forests. So if you deforest, then definitely that will lead to escalation in greenhouse gases. So the sources, sinks, and reservoirs have also been defined under Article 1 of the Framework Convention. When it comes to the objective of the convention, the prime objective, which has been very crystal clear, envisaged under Article 2, says that this particular framework convention intends to achieve, in accordance with
the relevant provisions of the convention, stabilization of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that should be achieved within a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems to adapt naturally to climate change, to ensure that the food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. So here you see, first is to achieve in accordance with relevant provisions, stabilization of greenhouse gases concentrations. That's the first thing, and of course at a level which should be achieved in the time frame sufficient to allow. So they haven't said that by tonight itself or by this particular time period itself. It will take certain time, and they haven't said that 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. So they have said that should be achieved in a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystems and adapt naturally to climate change. So this is then. Secondly, to ensure food production is not threatened. So basically, agriculture should not be threatened, because food production, if you talk about climate related measures, many a times several such sectors. Let's keep these sectors in mind, because whenever you study climate change law or even economics relating to climate change, you will find a sectoral approach. Which are these sectors? Well, for example, agriculture is one sector, industry is a sector, energy, transport, and then you have other relevant sectors which of course plays a very key role, like for example real estate, because that is something which again plays a significant role in climate change. You will wonder why. Of course, you know the science behind it, that leads to encroachments of certain areas which might be eco-sensitive in nature. We have seen that, and along with this, industry, agriculture, real estate, transport also is contributing a lot, because emissions out of the vehicles which are used in transportations, or even for our own purposes in day-to-day life, emissions are kind of very much high. As you all know, we've been following news that because of COVID-19 and nationwide lockdown across several countries, the pollution level drastically came down, and they are showing record of, like, in last 25 years, 30 years, you haven't seen this much of drastic fall in emissions. So you know how far the transport is contributing. Industries are closed, so that is also leading to drop in the temperature, as well as the air quality is getting far better. So, food production is one such area, because, when it comes to food production, even several means and modes of agricultural productions have been subject of debate and criticism. Like, for example, the June cultivation of this particular part of the country, or shifting cultivation, has been criticized by several climate scientists, saying that it's not environmentally sound. But on the other hand, there are also opponents saying that's a traditional mode of cultivation which has nothing to do with climate change. It doesn't contribute to emissions. So these kind of things are also there. So, but in the way, the bottom line is that the food production should not be threatened. So you see, this is a message that you should not be that much pro enviro also, which threatens several other sectors, and food being related to agriculture is one such sector. In addition to that, enabling economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner is, in one liner, says a lot. When it comes to economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner, as you all know, the meaning of sustainable development, we have discussed about it, the concept of sustainable development, it speaks a lot. It talks about intergenerational equity, it talks about intragenerational equity, it talks about integration of economics and environment. It talks about, now at this point of time, when we have the sustainable development goals, it just doesn't talk about development and environment. It talks about human rights, it talks about armed conflicts, humanitarian aspects, it talks about gender equality. So it talks about so many things, and they have all taken in a very integrated fashion. So even the factor of sustainable development has also kind of evolved in last couple of decades, and this is somewhere you will find, even now, when you use the term sustainable manner, and from this current juncture, when you try to understand and comprehend sustainable manner, your understanding is far wider than that of what it was way back in 1972. So Paris Agreement sustainable manner understanding will be far more comprehensive in comparison to the 1970 the 1992's UNFCCC. Another aspect is the principles. Now, the principles which guides the this particular climate change is something, negotiation is guided by several principles, and as I've already mentioned, CBDR is one such principle. Along with that, there are other principles which, in fact, we have already discussed, be it the principle of common sovereignty, permanent sovereignty, the principle of equity. But along with that, when it comes to Article 3 of the Framework Convention, it clearly emphasizes the sustainable development, the aspect of intergenerational equity. It talks about the benefit of present and future generations of humankind. Secondly, it talks about the equity. It talks about common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, along with which the developed countries have been given the immense responsibility, take the lead. It also emphasizes on specific needs and special circumstances of developing countries, particularly and especially those that are vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change, and of those parties also which, in fact, especially the developing countries parties, which have to bear a very disproportionate and abnormal burden of under this particular convention, that should bear some full consideration, should be given full consideration under UNFCCC. Thirdly, the principle of precautionary measures. Now, precautionary measures, as I've already discussed in one of the initial lectures, is all about anticipating, about preventing, and minimizing the causes of climate change, and to mitigate its adverse effects. So the precautionary principle has been also kind of highlighted, because there they have clearly enshrined that where there is a threat of or any serious or irreversible damage, where there is a lack of scientific certainty, well, it should not be used as a reason for postponing any measures. In fact, you have to take into account the policies and measures to deal with climate change, which should be, of course, cost effective. It should ensure global benefits at lowest possible costs. Now, here is the challenge. And of course, in order to achieve these policies and measures, should also take into account different socioeconomic aspects, different socioeconomic contexts. They should bear in mind whenever they take any such approach, be it adaptation or mitigation. They should consider several sectors. They should comprise, in fact, all the economic sectors, and effort should be given to address the climate change by carrying out in a very cooperative manner. In fact, along with that, the another important principle that this particular framework convention highlight is that each of the parties, they have a right, in fact, to right, and they should also, because they have a right as well as a duty to promote sustainable development. And these policies and measures that they are adopting to protect the climate system from any human induced change should be very appropriate for specific conditions of that particular countries, and it should be integrated with their national developmental plans and programs, so their economic interest should not be affected adversely, or anyways it should not be affected. So here, this is somewhere you will find that the adoption of measures to address climate change has taken a very differentiated approach, but of course at the same point of time, an integrated too. And finally, when it comes to cooperation, international cooperation is the guiding factor. So that is another principle, because here the countries have been asked to promote a supportive and an open international economic system should be also adopted, which would lead to a sustainable economic growth. So that these developing countries, they get economic support because they have economic aspirations. And if you talk about bringing emissions down, then they should also get some incentives or support from the other hand. So there should be an open international economic system that would lead to a sustainable economic growth and development in all the parties, especially the developing country parties. So they have emphasized on developing country parties because their issues, their problems should be understood first, then it should be addressed, and then accordingly any kind of unjustifiable or arbitrary discrimination or disguised restrictions on international trade should be totally abhorred. So that should not be there, because that will be hindrance for economic development at the same point of time. So it should not be disguised restrictions on international trade also at the same point of time. So it's a lot of balancing that you will find that they have emphasized on under principles of UNFCCC under Article 3 of the Framework Convention. When it comes to commitments, I insist you refer to Article 4 because that is very crucial. Article 4 gives a very clear picture of what all UNFCCC is about. Now, when you talk about commitments, we all know commitments is something which either makes us nervous or confident at the same point of time. It also depends to whom we are committing. So, and who is committing. So the thing is that to whom we are committing, who is committing, these two factors are important, and what are we committing. So all these things are important in every facets of life, I believe. But when it comes to climate change, all these parties who are definitely taking into account the CBDR principle, they're at the same point of time, they are also considering their national and regional development priorities. They have their respective national and regional objectives and circumstances also. So there they have list out several commitments, basically which are directed towards climate change and addressing climate change, which is directed on the basis of CBDR. So first and foremost is that all the country parties, especially the developed countries, in fact, they have to, this is applicable to develop for developing countries also, they have to develop periodically update, publish, and make available all relevant informations relating to anthropogenic gases. They have to first and foremost develop a national inventory of anthropogenic gases. And when I'm saying they, I mean all the country parties to this framework convention on climate change. So they have to first develop a periodical inventory. They have to develop an inventory, then they have to periodically update it and publish it, and also they have to share that information, make it available for the chief decision making body, which was also established by this convention, also known as the Conference of Parties. I believe I have discussed about it in many of my previous lectures. Thinking about future, so I came across this word future. So they have to make all these national inventories, whatever they are creating or publishing, available with the Conference of Parties. Secondly, they have to formulate, implement, and update national and regional climate change programs on mitigation. So whatever they are doing to measures that they are adopting to mitigate climate change, by addressing the anthropogenic by sources or removals by sinks of all these greenhouse gases, and especially those which are also not covered by Montreal Protocol on ozone depleting substances, and measures to facilitate adequate adaptation to climate change has also been implemented. So along with mitigation, in fact, adaptation has been, I haven't mentioned it here, but along with mitigation, in fact, with respect to adaptation also, all the country parties have been directed to formulate, implement, update national and regional climate change programs from time to time. It should address, of course, the issues of anthropogenic gases to remove them either from sources or removal by sinks or these greenhouse gases. Promotion of cooperation in development, application, diffusion of technologies, practices, and processes that control, reduce, or prevent greenhouse gases is another thing. And here you will find they have emphasized on technology transfer. So another commitment that they have emphasized over is, along with mitigation and adaptation is technology transfer. So countries have been asked to promote technology, to develop technology, and also to share that information share that technologies or even practices, or that in fact is aiming to control, reduce, and prevent anthropogenic gases, emissions of greenhouse gases. Now, the sectors that they have addressed, of course, the sectors besides the Montreal Protocol, the other relevant sectors that they have clearly highlighted here are energy, transport, industry, agriculture, waste management, and forestry. These are some of the sectors that they have mentioned. Besides, promoting sustainable management, promotion and cooperation in conservation enhancement, as appropriate of sinks, reservoirs of greenhouse gases, which are not controlled by Montreal Protocol. That has also been kind of addressed here. Now, here they have emphasized on which sectors? They have emphasized on forests, oceans, biomass, as well as other terrestrial, coastal, and marine ecosystems. So, an ecosystem-based approach has been taken here with respect to which, of course, should be in a very sustainable fashion. Now, they have emphasized on sustainable management of these carbon sinks, reservoirs of these ecosystems like terrestrial, biomass, forestry, oceans, etc., marine to be very specific. Along with that, elaborate and far more developed, appropriate and integrated plan for coastal zone management, water resources management, agriculture, and in fact also for protection and rehabilitation of areas, especially which are in Africa, has been affected by drought and desertification, like flood prone areas. That has also been kind of addressed. So, your adaptation measures, so the countries have been asked to cooperate for taking adaptation measures to address the impact of climate change. They have been also asked to take appropriate steps to, address the issue of floods, desertifications, droughts in Africa, to be very specific, and other countries also at the same point of time, and take an integrated approach for coastal zone management, water resources, agriculture, etc. Socioeconomic factor has also been given due prominence here. In fact, to take all these climate change considerations to the extent feasible, the relevant socioeconomic and environmental policies and actions should employ appropriate methods. Like, for example, environment impact assessment that should be formulated and determined nationally, but of course, they should be viewed with an objective to minimize the adverse effects on the environment, but at the same point of time, they should also not cause any adverse effect on the economy or on quality of life at the same point of time. So, human health is there, environment is there, but along with that, it should not also adversely affect the economy. So, for that, you should also deploy certain measures from time to time, right? And this is something, environmental impact assessment is just a procedure, as you all know. But along with that, there are several challenges also which come across in this process. So, along with that, promotion, cooperation of scientific, technological, technical, socioeconomic, and other research-related activities has been promoted under the commitments of the countries. Parties have to commit to promote, cooperate scientific, technological, technical, socioeconomic, and other research-related activities. There should be full, open, and prompt sharing of information. So, information sharing is it's a scientific information, technical information, technological information, legal information, socioeconomic information. All these relevant information should be exchanged from time to time. In fact, which might be also related to economic and social, which might have some economic and social consequences on various response strategies. So that's why full, open, and prompt sharing of information have been emphasized under this. Along with that, promotion and cooperation with respect to capacity building by means of education, training, and public